But I'm delighted to be here to talk about my PhD research. So I'll just kind of give a bit of an overview of my PhD research process. The title of it here. I don't know how many titles I went through. This is the last one that I settled on about 3 days before I submitted. So it's education program creation and policy articulation in international development NGOs for the painless percentage analysis. I won't go into kind of specifics of the research focus too much on the findings because I'll be here all night. But if anyone wants to ask me some more there, please. So it was an employment-based postgraduate program. Irish Research Council funded. I partnered with Plan International Ireland as the employment partner, and I did the PhD in the School of Education in UCD. I started it in 2018, and I just submitted last month. So it took a year longer than originally anticipated. I'll go into why that is in the slides. Just to kind of give a little bit of overview of what the research entails, because they're the main research questions. So they're really focused on kind of global education policy and looking at how concepts within global education policy are translated into education programming. And then trying to understand how kind of deeper lying concepts influence the policy translation process. And an important part of it for me was to try and generalize the findings to other organizations, so not just specific to Plan International and its programming. But as I said, if anyone wants to find out more about the findings, please ask me afterwards. So I just kind of focus a little bit about my experience over the 5 years. There was quite a lot of ups and downs. So I actually started the PhD with a different organization. Hence, I had 2 employment partners. A year into the PhD, the first organization, they had encountered some very bad funding difficulties and had to make almost everyone redundant. So that entailed me trying to find a new employment partner. Because of this change, I had to switch supervisors within the School of Education, UCD. And then for various reasons, I had 4 employment mentors. So there's quite a lot of ups and downs, quite a lot of changes that I had to deal with. So then when I eventually did move to Plan, start my research with them, and once later COVID happened, so I had to cancel my plans for field research and kind of reevaluate my research questions, which again was quite stressful, but says here it's important to kind of be adaptable and not panic. I had some very good supports around me. My supervisor was very supportive. Engaging with the IRC, they were very helpful and kind of telling me what I needed to do and continue with the funding. The environment within UCD as well, and the people in the research office were very helpful in kind of helping me through the process. So it says it's kind of said here, it's important to kind of be adaptable and to not panic when things like this happen. So for anyone who is wanting to do a PhD, just kind of keep this in mind that it's not going to be smooth sailing, that you are going to have to deal with things that you don't anticipate. So I'll look at some of the benefits now. Like from my perspective, the opportunity of doing research while embedded within an organization really provided us with great opportunity for doing an in-depth case study of Plan's education program and the development of a new program they're rolling out in West Africa. So I had this kind of degree of access to research participants that would have been very hard to get because I'd developed relationships with a lot of them. They were colleagues really, and I feel like the research outputs have really been greatly enhanced by this level of access. And when I moved to Plan, they were really good for like integrating me into the organization. I really felt like I was part of the team there. I wasn't just some guy in the corner doing research that no one knows anything about. There was kind of constant engagement and interaction with the people that I worked with on a kind of one-to-one basis and in team meetings, so that I kind of got feedback and chapter drafts from some people as the research was progressing. And then just kind of from a personal point of view, I gained some further experience with an international NGO. As most of you probably know, Plan International is a major player in the international development field. But it's kind of important as well to kind of point out your own intellectual development as you go through the PhD journey. It's probably not really something that you kind of focus on when you start out, but it's really something that you kind of that I did anyway, that I reflected back on as I was coming towards the end of it, and saw how my perspectives changed as the research progressed, and it's really opened the door to more opportunities. I probably should have said at the outset that I'm currently a research and evaluation specialist with the Centre for Effective Services here in Dublin. I've finished my contract with Plan, and I wouldn't have been able to apply and to get that position if I hadn't this PhD experience behind me. And then finally, I just wanted to focus a little bit on what I think anyway were the benefits to Plan. Over the few years that I was there, they got to use my own background and expertise. I have a lot of years experience in monitoring, evaluation, and education. I tend to help out those different aspects of those roles while I was in Plan. One of the methods I employed was a participant observation approach. So I was really engaged on a kind of day-to-day basis on things like developing the new education program in West Africa, engaging with external evaluators, things like this. And one of the key aspects of it that I wanted to do was to produce these kind of a series of kind of short, really policy and practice focused papers that are based around the key findings of the research. One of the things I was constantly told during my time at Plan is to stop speaking in academies, and to speak in lay terms as much as possible. Like organizations like Plan, they really do appreciate research. A lot of them, or some people that I engage with, they already have PhDs or they have done masters, so they know the importance of research and the potential benefit of it. But they're busy people. They don't want to be talking about assemblage theory and epistemology and ontology and all these things. They just want to kind of know short kind of snapshots of what the kind of key findings are and how you can engage these key findings, what are your recommendations, things like this. So that's what I'm focused on doing now over the next few months, is developing these short practice and policy oriented findings. And one last point I'd just like to kind of raise, which is something that I noticed when I was in Plan over the years, was kind of the level of turnover of staff, but it's an issue in the industry more broadly. So a lot of the engagement that I have is on a one-to-one basis with people discussing some of the findings and some of the ongoing research. But a lot of people that I spoke with, they would have left the organization over the course of a few years. So it's important to identify who the lifers are and build relationships with them. But then there needs to short practice papers, so hope to alleviate this kind of degree of institutional knowledge loss, and really, kind of help them get the benefit of the PhD research. So that's my presentation. Thanks a lot for this.
Thank you very much. Tejaswy, please.
Thank you so much, dear Martyn, for the opportunity to talk about EASE. So EASE is Engaging Adolescents in Sexual and Reproductive Health Services in Ethiopia, as you can see. It is being conducted by Dr. Anne as the Principal Investigator from Trinity College Dublin, with her co-PI, Dr. Martyn from Addis Ababa University. Thanks to IRC COALESCE program, EASE is happening because of you. So what is EASE? EASE is Youth Action Participatory Research, which is designed to engage youth and adolescents to firstly to determine what adolescents consider to be their meaningful engagement in sexual and reproductive health service delivery and programming, and secondly to describe and develop a model of good practice for how to meaningfully engage and involve adolescents in SRH programming in Ethiopia. Why Ethiopia? There's 33% of the population in Ethiopia is adolescents, and 4 in 5 adolescents are living in rural areas in which child marriages, partial and full female genital mutilation, teenage pregnancy are not only persistent but are very prevalent. So EASE is designed to be conducted in 3 different phases. The first phase was to conduct focus group discussions with adolescents to understand what services they are getting, what are the problems they are identifying in the sexual and reproductive health services. And through the phase 2, we have utilized photo voice as a methodology in which the adolescents were asked to take pictures of what sexual and reproductive health service means to them. And the third phase was to do a photo exhibition with the photos that were taken by the adolescents to the community leaders, teachers, and all the key stakeholders that were involved in the project. So the findings arising from the EASE will inform policy and decision making at bilateral, federal, regional, and district levels. All these levels happen only because of the key partners and collaborators that we have during the study. So beginning from the onset of the study, all the key partners were involved, including Embassy of Ireland in Ethiopia, Ministry of Health, and key civil society partner, which is AMREF. From developing the research question, which is what does meaningful engagement in SRH research programming mean to young people living in rural communities in Ethiopia, to implementing it on site with the help of the key the key civil society partners who played an important role in recruiting the adolescents to the project. AMREF Ethiopia has been doing Power to Youth program for over a decade with in-school and out-of-school adolescents in Amhara region in Ethiopia. Through working with civil society partner, helped us to reach adolescents living in remote areas even. And also they played an important role in designing the methodology for this study. There were also challenges during the project implementation. Initially, our civil society partner was Gender Health, as you can see on your brochures. They had to withdraw from the study because the initial study area was afar, but it was not available or not accessible because of the national emergency and the conflict that is happening in Ethiopia from 2021. So we had to change the region to Amhara, which also has more child marriage issues, unintended pregnancy issues, and all the SRH related problems. And so AMREF Ethiopia has been recruited as, or has been part as of the EASE study as the new civil society partner. And thanks to IRC during this time, during the challenges of the project, because it has been suspended from time to time, but we are constantly progressing slowly. So talking about the methodology of photo voice, AMREF has made important role in recruiting the study participants who have been with them for the past 2 years through the Power to Youth program. Without them, it would not be possible to have these many study participants, adolescents in EASE study. Working with AMREF involved a total of 120 student study participants from 3 implementation areas were grouped into 16 groups according to their gender, age, schooling status. And not only this, but AMREF staff were also participated in the study as key informant interviews, and their experiences and working in the field, and also their inputs on how better the services can be provided were also considered. Currently, the study, the data collection is completed. Now we are at a stage where we are doing the data analysis for the EASE project. And from there, through the EASE findings, we want to complement Ireland's existing work in sexual and reproductive health region by identifying potential entry points where Ireland can add value to SRH of adolescents according to 2024 country strategic plan. And also studies and policy recommendations involving adolescents as central voice I believe will accelerate the process of achieving few of the SDG goals, such as universal access to SRH and gender equality. That's it. Thank you so much.
That was really, really interesting. Thank you so much. Please take a seat. I'll report Dr. Gibbons. This study incidentally also on the European. Sorry, the slides are just there.
Very much. Thank you very much. I would just introduce you to one of the programs that was referred to earlier by the colleague from that introduced the Marie Curie program. This is a project building resilience through education, and the partners involved, I think it reflects what the colleague spoke about earlier on. We have 3 HEIs in the form of UCD, Soda University, and Southeast Technological University, Concern Worldwide, and then a private sector partner, Future Analytics, is now KPMG Future Analytics, and NOAA, which is a network of universities. Just as an outline and to show the relationship between the universities and the NGO, I'm going to try and give you just an overall picture as to where the project came from. It fundamentally came from the relationship we had with Concern Worldwide working in Ethiopia. The project itself, which ran from 2017 up until the end of 2022, and then give an idea of where we hope we will take the project going forward. Ethiopia, as the colleague said earlier on, a country of 120 million people. Wolaita, where the project was based, is in this southern region now. It was at the time in the SNNP region, and this is a population of about 3 million people. So the study all began with a project in 2013. I see Kate Corcoran was country director. She's here at the moment of Concern at the time. And they were trying to look at came out of an ex post evaluation to see what was the impact of Concern's engagement since it intervened in Wolaita in 1984. We engaged directly with the local university, Soda University, to undertake the course, the research at the time. And it was found, well, I don't have time to go in, it was a very interesting study, but it found that Concern had very much increased in the areas of work. It worked in these districts or Warada, that were the poorest Warada, and it had increased the livelihoods in people in those areas to the extent that Concern exited Wolaita in 2014, 2015 to work in those areas mostly with most humanitarian need. At the moment now, Concern in Ethiopia are just working North Wallo, Northern Amhara, dealing with Tigray, Jijiga, dealing with the Somali region. More recently, there's notions that it might work in Addis Ababa, but very much on humanitarian action. Out of this program, when it was finished, our colleagues from Soda University asked us to see where are we going to go next. again, it was a time of relative stability at the time, and we had all these notions of moving from, I suppose, humanitarian or aid or charity-based work to more one of mutual benefit, driven by academia or education. I introduced you already to the partners. The project itself was very much a mobility program. I suppose we were thinking of this notion that, no more so than how Ireland developed, this notion of diaspora bringing back ideas by bringing Ethiopians over to see how things are being done. Maybe they can adapt and adopt it to their own particular circumstances. So, but we needed to build that trust and these relationships, and the project, the BRT project, was all about establishing trust, establishing the networks, the way of working between the partners to see. I suppose we were all the time thinking about how this is going to lead to a more transformative type of socio-economy in Walaita going forward, addressing vulnerabilities. The initial project worked on critical infrastructure, it worked on academic platforms, and very much trying to establish enabling environment for colleagues within UCD and beyond to work with colleagues in Ethiopia and address some of the fundamental challenges that are inherent in the internationalization of higher education, which is probably an argument beyond this presentation. But to give you an idea of, we realized we had problems, as I'll talk about later on, both with the conflict and with COVID. But at the same time, the project turned out quite successful in the long run. To give you a little bit of an idea of what happened, there are now in place a series of, I think, a better enabling environment to allow us to work in conjunction between Southeastern East Technological University, UCD, and Walaita on shared modules. Some of those modules that are very much working together, driven by Walaita Soda University, are in business innovation, building resilience, gender-based violence, especially in emergencies, and localization, which is a hot topic in the humanitarian field. We set out to include 14 PhDs on this program. 8 have completed. 3 are ready to submit. 2 I don't think will ever submit, but where again the final date for submission will be into 2024. We have set out to have 39 peer-reviewed publications out of these PhDs. We already have 19 papers in international journals. Again, all of this is shared between the universities. The PhDs were done on the basis of protocol arrangements. The project itself was, you heard about the 3 I's earlier on. It was interdisciplinary and very much worked across the disciplines there of agriculture, health, education, political science, and anthropology. And again, I will go back to say that we have gone some way to address the brain drain that is often inherent in these international higher education partnerships. All of these PhDs are now back in Walaita. We have the other issue that we were seeing with IHE was issues of interference. I think all the projects that have come have been arose from Walaita Soda University, and we've tried to support them and learn from them in that way. And the other problem that we would have seen with IHE in our earlier research is that the fear of creating dependencies. So I do think that we have gone some way, and we'll see the impact of it later on. In all the impacts, we are still working with Walaita Soda University. I'll bring you on to the next program. But we believe that there is positively localized research has really strengthened and has given a greater confidence as well as capacity both to Walaita Soda University and to UCD. One would know if you had studied localization you will see that one of the key issues, according to the START network anyway, is the whole issue of visibility. Well, I just saw the university have really become visible within the area and nationally within the university system in Ethiopia. And this is something we're trying to measure and see how it moves going into the future. Early stage researchers, you see pictures of some of they engaged with companies and different organizations on their various mobilities here in Ireland, and it has established the foundations anyway for many links. But there were also unintended positives and negatives. The partnership established out of this, we're now going into a situation where UCD and some of our geniuses at UCD see ourselves as a global university. Having said that, one could question how global certain curricula are. And this has given us a great opportunity, especially I've actually originally come from a farmer, and the idea that we would have not just a farm in Lines, but also a partnership in the farm with Wolaita offers huge opportunities for research, especially global research, coming and replicating research from Lines Estate and what is happening in Wolaita. Problems, reduced mobility due to COVID and the conflict in Ethiopia and in Sudan, there was a problem. Restricted engagement because of financial circumstances. Just some of the real impacts, meeting with Kerry, meeting with Goats Bridge Trout Farm, Teagasc and its engagement in Ashtown, Oak Park in Teagasc, and Hilltown in Teagasc. All of these guys started to make relationships were fundamental. Finally, where we're taking this, one thing is about the theory and speaking about all of these innovations. The other thing is making them happen. It's not just about, it's about making them happen. Henry Ford said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Instead, they got a car. So, but under the how they innovation in their thinking. So, we want to take it on to continue building with the university, but now the next stage will go from project to program. Kerry, Teagasc, these kind of groups are now interested to come, hopefully, to see what is happening on the other side of the fence. And while long these trusted relationships, we're hoping as we move into the next phase, it will make, we will build on that trust. Lastly, our concern, we're very much talking about working with concern in a new way of working, bringing three concepts in humanitarian action together. Preparedness, which is the new move on from disaster risk reduction, the humanitarian development nexus, and localization in a project we work led by Wolaita Development Association called Localizing Humanitarian Preparedness. And this is where we're at now in starting the next tranche. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I can answer them later on. Thank you.
It's really fascinating. I think we could have listened to another bit, but we have to move on. And our last person that we'll be hearing from is Gretta Fitzgerald from Concern Worldwide. We have a lot of themes going on. Looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm here kind of wearing an old hat and somewhat new hat. My old hat would be as Program Director for Concern Bangladesh between 2020 and earlier this year, March this year. And then my new hat is in my current role as Policy and Advocacy Advisor based here in Dublin. So the experiences I have, I suppose, with our research in Bangladesh and what we're trying to kind of progress on with our kind of upcoming and new research that's coming on board, I think it's very relevant and kind of I can hear a lot of echoing of what we've been discussing earlier with some of the discussions that happened earlier this afternoon. So hopefully this kind of adds to what we've already been discussed. So in Bangladesh, we've worked in the urban space for over 10 years. We've been in Bangladesh for 50 years, 50 plus years, but in it really trying to focus on addressing extreme poverty in the urban context, particularly Dhaka and Chattanooga, the two major cities. We have an Irish Aid funded program called Improving the Lives of Urban Extreme Poor, funded by Irish Aid. And part of that, we had a research arm to it. The research was understanding urban livelihood trajectories in Bangladesh. I won't get too much into the research itself today, but more around how we really try to leverage the research for influencing program design and policy. The objective of the research itself was to explore and understand different livelihood trajectories of the people we were working with in Dhaka and Chattanooga, as well as the impacts and policy. So that enabling environment piece. Bangladesh is aspiring to graduate as a middle-income country. So when we're looking at long-term development programs, we really need to be conscious of system strengthening, that enabling policy environment, and how we as an NGO are really trying to contribute to that. For the research, we had more implementing partners as well, but for the research in itself, we kind of had 3 partners that were engaged. With IDS and the Centre for Social Protection, working with Stephen Devereux, and we developed a research institute, which is a Bangladesh-based organization, a research institute, and Professor Asif was working on that with us. And then we had the all-party parliamentary group, which would be a civil society organization that brings together interested members of parliament to discuss on specific issues related to extreme poverty. So this would be our kind of target group or interest group that we were trying to influence. As I said, the funding was from Irish Aid, but it was from our Irish Aid program grant. So it wouldn't have come through the funding mechanisms that were outlined earlier. It was a qualitative research, purely qual, and tracking the progress of just 36 participants out of 9,000 participants. And we had 3 rounds. And the baseline thankfully happened in 2019, but then in 2020 we had the COVID-19 pandemic and the various lockdowns that happened in Dhaka and Chattanooga. And then 2021 we had another round. Some of the kind of activities, along with the data collection analysis, report writing and whatnot, we held several public hearings at city municipality level with local partners and with program participants and the researchers, so that they can voice their experiences, their issues, and their challenges directly with local power bearers. We also held a high-level roundtable with members of parliament, who are a partner at APPG, and it's really targeting the policy policy implementation level. So we counted those. Some may say they're advocacy activities, and we tried to make sure that the research and advocacy were very much going hand in hand. On the research side, key findings. The program initially helped participants in improving their livelihoods, so it worked well. It was a very much a graduation type program, and we could see the trajectories going up. However, the big shock in the middle of COVID, we could see just after the baseline incomes were increasing, people were becoming more confident, their skills base was growing, with access to more networks, more services, and then COVID happened, and it was like they fell off the side of the cliff. And everything just was wiped out, and we had to start from scratch then, late 2020, early 2021. So our program was designed for shocks like slum evictions, slum fires, being pushed off pavements and things like that. But we never imagined a major shock like COVID-19, or maybe, for example, that is on an earthquake fault line. So it really kind of opened our eyes to say, are we really kind of prepared for these major shocks, and are our programs shock responsive? Thankfully, we were able, with the flexibility with Irish Aid, we were able to then adapt and kind of refocus and really program based on some of the findings from the research in 2021, 2022. Income, food security, access to health services, like I mentioned, they declined significantly due to the impacts of COVID-19 lockdowns. Early lockdowns in Bangladesh were very severe, especially in the slum communities, where some program participants, all working in the informal economy, who didn't have a safety net, didn't have a backup, went to pursue their livelihoods and were being kind of penalized and punished for that, and that kind of set them back further. So this is very harsh environment at the time. There were social safety nets programs available, but they were either not available, they were there on paper, and there was lots of money sitting into different government administration offices, but they're very hard to access. And some of the barriers included not having a national ID, or not having the right connections and the right information. So what? We've done many pieces of research that, as NGOs and academia, that come up with similar findings. So what? As a program director with Concern, I found it quite challenging, and I come from a research background, so I could see the points from the academia, our partners, and I could see the points from our advocacy partners, and I could see our own kind of priorities as Concern. There was kind of an elephant in the room with us. The enabling environment piece, the system strengthening piece, we just weren't grasping it. And the research wasn't really speaking to it. So we had to kind of shift from the data collection and the big lengthy reports to really kind of working with our advocacy partners, identifying the stakeholders and trying to find out how can we communicate to them the challenges and issues that our program participants are facing, and also communicate, you have the power to change this. You can do this within your role as an MP or as a ward councillor, or as a city mayor. You can be able to help these people and improve their lives. We also kind of figured out that there has been an evolution in the understanding of extreme poverty, urban poverty. Previously, it was very much, they need to go back to the village. They came here and they migrated, but they should just go back to the village. But the research and the dialogues and conversations that Concern has been having, and other partners in urban areas, is that not all poor are equally poor, and kind of humanizing people living in the conditions of extreme poverty in urban areas. And that, although it never kind of built into the research, and the research is very much focused on the questions and the hypotheses, this kind of humanizing the issue, I think, is quite important if you want to bring around that societal impact that was mentioned earlier. And also understanding the specific needs that people are raising through the research process. When we started building in or catching up on doing the kind of stakeholder analysis and political economy analysis, we kind of got a better understanding of issues around housing, social protection, public health service, and education. As Concern, we have assumptions around this is why the housing policy is delayed, it's not signed off. But by working with the local academia, Dr. Seif, he was able to go into government offices and have conversations that we cannot have. And I think that's an important partnership, especially a local partnership, that they have access to networks and information that either Irish academia or Irish NGOs may not have, how to work together and play off our strengths. It was clear that our advocacy needs to be more evidence-based and needs to be more targeted and continuous. So using the research process from day one and not the dissemination at the end. The dissemination at the end is a nice workshop and it's nice and interesting and people will take away their own learning. But the entire process, we're missing opportunities for engagement and influencing. And something, again, really powerful, and I think it speaks to the localization agenda, is the voices of people living in conditions of extreme poverty or affected by crisis. They need to be heard, and making space for that, equipping people with the skills to advocate on their own behalf is quite important. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think kind of key takeaways, as I suppose, are the importance of stakeholder and policy analysis in tandem with the research question design. That means then that there's greater hope of it influencing externally and not just in our own bubble and our own vacuum. And the communication and influencing plan, sometimes you call it a dissemination plan, an advocacy plan, but really like communication and influencing, like what are we really trying to change? For example, having a qualitative study, it helped with us, but policymakers they still wanted their quant. They wanted us to tell them this is significant. Then I think bringing in policy change makers bringing them along throughout the entire process, which I mentioned earlier. Choosing partners, and I think this was alluded to earlier, is choosing partners where you have interests. There's an alignment of interests, that's what I'm trying to say. So there's alignment of interests and strengths. So that kind of makeup of the team, I think, is quite important. And there's no one size fits all. It has to be kind of created as I need. And I think one major challenge that I think our fellow NGO peers here will attest to is time and staff skills. We don't have the time, we don't have the staff, and we have often these things I'm talking about here, we have a limited skills base. So if the research funders in the room have things to take away, we need to make time for participation. A 3-year research project, increase it to 4 years and allow that extra time for real, genuine participation. Empowering partners and users, research users with skills to actually use the research and engage effectively in the research process. And then the localization. I think it's great to have DSAI facilitating conferences and that, but our research partners in Global South, where is a place for them, and can we kind of really look at what's being said in the localization space and make sure that we're up to speed with that and making sure that we're not taking other people's research and presenting it. Quite similar to what I'm doing today, because a lot of this work has been done by colleagues and partners in Bangladesh. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's really, really great. I really enjoyed all 4 presentations. We're running a little bit behind schedule, but maybe I would love to ask 1 or 2 questions and open it up very briefly to the audience, and then we will proceed with a short period of making sure that everyone kind of gets to know 1 or 2 other people that they didn't know yet, and that they kind of go up to other people here in the room to have a chat. So one thing that there were several really interesting themes in all of the research, certainly around partners and working with partners, different partners. What I also found really interesting is to kind of think about who started the idea of conducting the research, whether in some cases it was very clearly the ask came from the NGO. The NGO decided, in Concern's case, I think Bangladesh decided that they really wanted to find something out and kind of went from there. Whereas, correct me if I'm wrong, I have a sense that the reproductive health program kind of was more of a researcher-led program that then kind of found local partners. And I'm not in any way judging whether one is better than the other, but I do think that that really influences the type of funding that you can access and how you can construct your research. And I think there's good and bad in both cases. And really, if we're all here in this room, I think to see, with a desire to see all research being taken up and used and kind of making a difference in some shape or form. And I don't really think that, you know, there is one is particularly better than the other, but I think it's all quite different. I would love to just ask one quick question. If you could do something differently, what would you have done differently, and how do you feel, you know, maybe kind of change things that you have thought of throughout? I mean, I think in terms of Pat's case, I might start with you. You have, you know, you've done various phases of the research, so you've had this wonderful luxury, I think, of kind of going from one way of conducting research to taking some of the elements and going again. What are your takeaways?
Very good. Just answer the first question is where did the research come from? The first phase came from concern. The second phase came from Related Social University. And the third phase that we're going into now is coming from the consortium or the partnership. So concern wanted the project done, and we talked about engaging with the local university. And that came out, and once the university then in the second phase, they said, well, we want to see more, or we want more engagement. So they drove that. And then after BRT, the consortium now, so we're going back to concern now. Not asking,
the funders perhaps as well.
not asking them just to come back, but to ask them as part of the bigger program. We're now engaging with concern on the localized humanitarian preparedness. We're asking Kerry and Chagas to come in on the farm. And but I do think that there is a sense that those enablers the President talked about have been established, and we have a little bit more trust in how things are going. As to what would we do differently? We stop COVID. I don't know. Yeah, I do think that it has been slow. Like we saw the snail earlier on going, but there's certain things that can be expedited. There's certain things that need trust, that need to be talked to and told on to people. And I don't know, to tell you the truth. I think that over time is a complex program, and there are certain things that went different things that went wrong. But I think in the main it's gone pretty well.
Trying to think what I'd do differently, and I'd probably get a lot of things. But I think I probably would have initially, if I could go back, I probably would have spent a bit more time kind of thinking about who my principal supervisor should be. Like I said, I switched supervisors, and I think this isn't just light on the my initial supervisors who really work out with him. But he was fine with switching and everything, but that kind of caused a bit of stress and delayed things. So I probably would have taken a bit more time and done a bit more research and a bit more contact with potential supervisors. And then actually doing the research, I think that would probably go back. I'd spend a bit less time trying to figure out what my theoretical framework is or was. It's maybe spending a bit less time reading Deleuze and Guattari, and just kind of settling on what symbols and nonsense is. It worked out in the end, but that took a long time. Yeah, I think if I could go back again, it would be things.
To answer the first question on where the question comes from, I think by seeing in this perspective that what we are really asking is what adolescents want, how do they want to get engaged? So I think that would be the central agenda of all the key partners that were involved. Given AMREF or ministry, AMREF is doing work in the field to make it better. Make a better service provider. In that sense, if I look at that perspective, I think it doesn't matter where it came from, it doesn't matter what it does after. So how after we develop a good model, it should be feasible to be adapted to different regions in Ethiopia as well, as most of the rural communities in Ethiopia. And what I would do differently, there were a lot of challenges during the project project implementation as I was mentioning. Due to the conflict, due to the security reasons, the international currency was not being able to sanction to on ground for the photo voice. There were challenges with the disposable cameras. So yeah, maybe I would exclude that and find the alternative for easier process.
I suppose the origins came from the program design itself. So it's a 5-year development program, multi-sectorial, and the kind of key questions were around enabling environments, system strengthening, but then as well, will the model work? Is this something that should be replicated and scaled up? And one thing that I think struck me earlier in some of the comments coming from the audience was, as NGOs, we often don't know what we need to know, and we don't know what the research questions are. We don't have time. And something that struck me kind of is the way research is designed with NGOs. If we could replicate our program design a little bit more with identifying needs, doing a theory of change, then maybe the relevancy of the research would increase. So like that's probably one thing around doing it differently, is really trying to tie our research to our theory of change process a bit more. The other big thing is the staff scale and time. We didn't have the right staff, and we didn't have the right time allocated for really trying to genuinely engage in the research, even if it's a concern or if it's with our local partners or with IDS. We're all just kind of racing to catch up, and just having that time to convene all the different partners and just talk about things and share and what do you think, and just having that time to absorb things. We just didn't have the time or the space where it's the luxury of time.
Thank you very much. Due to time constraint here as well, I'm going to open it to the audience. Is there anyone who has a burning question? Any kind of question? I think that I have so many more questions, but I'd love to just hear some, maybe in a funding context, or maybe just in the content, or how people dealt with the outcomes. I think it's really interesting to hear how different people are dealing with the outcomes. There's a question.
I want to ask you a question about this presentation, the last presentation of Bangladesh. So, because I have a presentation tomorrow, it's also new in this context. But from your research, we have found that usually during the COVID pandemic, informal economy was favored and so with events who got most effects, negative effects. But there are some other researches that they claim that in some cases, informal economy has been able to flourish during the COVID-19 pandemic because they have been contained. They are informal. There is not that much influence of the government. In this context, I want to ask you that have you faced such recommendations that informal economies that are mostly managed by the groups and improved societies have been able to take advantage of this pandemic and their businesses flourish?
So yeah, Concern would work largely with people engaged in the informal economy, and then trying to make connections and linkages with some formal economy, private sector businesses, and try and make those connections. I think in general, COVID-19, hard to find positives for the impact it had on our program participants. It really did for 2020 especially, and there's a second wave, then the Delta wave in 2021. It really knocked the wind out of a lot of the progress that people were making. In the informal economy, of course, there's different things that popped up, like people were now selling masks and sanitizers, so these kind of demand for different products and services emerged. But the kind of risks associated with the informal economy that were there pre-COVID, I think they were exacerbated during COVID. But like the informal economy itself, it's extremely important for people living below the poverty line, people living in extreme poverty, especially for women. So yes, the informal economy it's difficult to engage in and whatnot, but it's incredibly important. And in the case of Bangladesh, if we look at the economic growth over the last since independence, like a lot of that growth has been through, of course, the garment sector, but from the informal economy. So I think it's very, very nuanced, but difficult times.
One more, okay. Last question, and then we'll.
Very much. Sorry, it's a very short one. What struck me was the last statement by Gretta, who said NGOs don't know what they need to know now, and that is quite a very important aspect of the work. So I was wondering, how do you go about addressing that question if your work is so effective? Thank you.
I think as NGOs, we're especially concerned, like we're a humanitarian and development organization, and we're in the business of addressing humanitarian needs. So our strong point and our kind of bread and butter is identifying the immediate needs of affected communities. So that's kind of what we're good at. But then the research, what research gaps are there? How do we influence bigger, wider societal policy change? That's where we need to partner with academia. And that's where they bring their strengths and their expertise. And I think that's the mutual benefit of partnerships like that have been presented.
Oh, one more question, one last one. That hand, please. There.
Again, not a question, just a compliment what Gretta was saying, which I agree as again it's like working for NGO, it's head of Consortium activity. So that question, well, how do we I agree, of course, on the element that we need resources essential to think about research and implement research, etc. I could tell you goal is 200 plus million euro organization we don't have a research position, for example. That's not to say that we don't do research, we do. It's very challenging, It's actually to the goodwill, and it's not even a skills issue. Certainly in my organization, we have people, myself, my whole team with PhDs, with masters, with very good research. But do you do the direct implementation, or do you do the research avenue? But to answer to that piece of how do you become effective, we do have very strong monitoring and evaluation systems in place. I'm sure I can speak from our organization. I am sure concerned likewise to ensure that we are effective, which really actually implement research methodologies. So yeah, rest assured that we're very effective, we're very accountable, overly accountable, I should say. To our donors and to our supporters, etc. The issue is more about how can you plan long term, like Gretta was saying, and how can that be resolved? Thank you.
Just to add to that last point, one of the big issues or problems with regard to the Marie Curie mobility programs is the whole idea, especially the RISE program, requires that the organization will maintain the salary of a person. So for us to maintain, this is why you saw the monies from Concern were relatively low compared to the other partners. Because universities as an organisation have a research brief. While you undertake research in order to improve your work, you're not a research entity. So it's very hard to get somebody to, or Concern to expect a person to take a year off to go out and do research and for Concern to pay them. So we had to circumvent ways to be able to allow this to work. And that is probably a main limitation when it comes to the RISE program. But otherwise it works very well. Sorry.
Thanks. Thank you very much. I think our wonderful contestants are our contestants are our wonderful speakers deserve a round of applause.